doctor, because it's morning.
It's morning. Yeah. I know, morning class. Yeah. I pun kalau boleh lagi prefer untuk buat benda lain daripada kelas. But it is what it is. How many people, how many of your classmates, yeah? Sorry, first time meeting you guys.
Probably like 111, 113, I think.
Right, okay. Yeah, so attendance-wise, it's Dr. Mark said it's all gonna be more or less sorted out, right? So you're not gonna have to worry about that. Recording is already in progress as well. So if there's, I'm just checking if I miss anything before I start my class. I think not. Right. So if I miss that, hi, Ravinia.
Hi, doctor.
Okay, it's good to put a face on a name.
Okay.
So that's Ravinia, Pravina, and Haziq. Okay. Assalamualaikum and good morning. My name is Fitri. Some of you may know me, some of you don't. I teach mostly DVM4 and DVM5, so this is the right cohort that I usually taught, but I'm getting more and more DVM1 classes, so that's just a little bit about me. I'm relatively new. I just joined in the faculty in 2019 as a senior lecturer, but I've always been in the faculty. I did my DVM, I did my PhD in the faculty. You may hear my baby noise in the background because she's not so well. She's crying. Anyway, as I was saying, it's a DVM and PhD in UPM. Together with me today, I've also invited my PhD students, my master students, and my future master students as well. So I think Ms. Husna is here somewhere, Dr. Aisha as well, and Mr. Vijaya. Thank you for being able to make time to join because I also told them very last minute. I'm going to share screen now. What do you guys see? Sorry. That's the last slide. Spoiler alert. I don't want to do it in presenters mode because I won't be able to see you guys. So I think this is as good as you get. I hope it's okay with you. Right. So I at least can see Ravinia like nodding her head, so I know. So today's lecture is going to be on the reproductive anatomy and physiology. They've decided to just compartmentalize and allow me to do all the male lectures. So that's not so much anyway. I'm thankful for that. So I only have 4 lectures with you guys. So to start with is the basic anatomy and physiology. What I put in the if I can tell you a bit of a story of this picture is that this is a hybrid of Bos gorus rubaki with Bos indicus as a result of assisted reproductive technologies. So they were using ICSI or intracytoplasmic injection, using sperm from the seladang, and then using oocyte from the domestic cattle, I think Bos indicus. And then they kind of like do it IVF, right? So if you're familiar with these terms, in vitro fertilization, and they managed to get an embryo and they transfer it to a surrogate mother, and this is, I think, as far as I understand, the first hybrid that was conceived in this way. So these are I think to begin with, these are like the end application of what you can do if you kind of master the course, or if you master the field, you can actually do that, like hybridization. You can yeah, to a certain extent, we were thinking to revive back Sumatran rhino, right? So that's the end application. But always bear in mind that I think the possibilities is endless. So Husna, if you remember, there was a poster that we saw in Therio lab yesterday. The calf, right? The calf picture with white head. So this is the calf as it grows up 6 years after, and you can see there's a lot of genetic and there's a lot of phenotypic potential, producing a lot of meat that you can actually explore. But of course, I won't go to the backstory of what happens to this hybrid project. But just to let you know, apart from of course using hybrids, using different species, you can also use different semens from let's say from beef breed that is readily available. So I think that is where I'm going to come at to start with the lecture. That eventually we can do a lot of things if we manage to cover whatever aspect that we want, and then the application is very good indeed. So to make it simple, I'm just going to basically touch the anatomy and physiology of it. But my approach will be different from your usual anatomy 1 and anatomy 2 that you learn in preclinical study. So it'll be more into functional anatomy. And also, I'll also touch on clinical anatomy in relation to the anatomy. What are the clinical things that you should expect, as well as comparative anatomy, looking at different species. Very brief, because we don't have a lot of time. They just give me 1 hour. So this is what I'm going to squeeze your brain with. To start with, I think it's good to use analog. It's good to use a model that you can all relate to. It's more stable. So we're going to use Boole in this instance, not to complicate yourself with other species. So if you imagine you're a vet, right? Most of the time when the animals are presented to you, it's already in the crush. But actually you're missing a lot of things that are happening before that, which I will go in further. But anyway, now the animal is in the crush. You can still observe fairly a lot of things. So if you can see here, the animal's penis is already descended down. You can see part of the penis. You can also see the prepuce, whether it's all right or not, just externally, right? You're trying to make an observation. So you can see the animal's eyes, the body condition score. So more or less, although you're thinking about looking at the reproductive, you would want to know the overall picture of the health of the animal. So try to do as much as possible before you start touching the animals, meaning doing external physical examination visually. And then when you start touching the animal, of course, you get to know more. But I usually like to appraise the animal. I like to visualize the animal before I do any procedure or before I handle the animal. And it goes without saying, this is the picture taken in PTH, Tanah Merah, Kelantan. So it is no more now. It used to be a nucleus cattle farm for Kedah Kelantan breed. So these are, I think, the exhibition A for Kedah Kelantan lah, so Kedah Kelantan cattle. So like I say, if you go a little bit more than looking at the animal in the crush, if you look at the animal in the paddock, you can see how they behave naturally. You can see how it interacts with other cows, with other bulls, with calf, in fact, and how it walks as you start to chase the animal into the yard. So yang ni pun you boleh nampak dia jalan kan. So as they walk, you can evaluate their gait, can evaluate their movement. So you know, if you're doing BSE, you can check that box for locomotion if you're observing a certain male. But overall, it's also good that you are informing the health of the herd, body condition score generally. And then once it goes into the yard, you can observe a bit more closer. And as well as when it's in the trash or raceway, you can get a lot you can get a lot of information just by observation. So that's what I'm saying. Don't miss the opportunity. If you have a procedure that you're going to do in the morning, make sure you come earlier. Make sure you be the first to come. So when you join the staff for whatever procedure, you know more, you know well. I think it's important that veterinarian develop these skills, develop this discipline, that you always come earlier and I think you will learn more. And when you have a lot of information, it's also useful for you to use for the management of the animal, management of the herd, management of the cattle. So as I was saying, anatomy, I'm sure you cover this more or less on touch basis. What are the anatomies of the bull? But just to revise you again, if you're talking about rectal palpation, which is what you're accessible to, rectal palpation means when you put your hand inside the rectum of the bull, right? So what you're actually assessing is the inside the pelvic cavity component of the penis. Meaning, if you see penis, right, or if you see the male reproductive tract, it's like this continuous tract that goes. If you see from the gland penis, goes up, then there's your so that's your S curve that I forgot the name, and then it goes slightly inside the cavity, and once it's inside the cavity, then it goes into all this muscle and all these accessory sex glands. So basically, it's like this whole tract, but when it enters a different region, they get different names. But always remember that it's connected. I think that is one thing that you should always remember. Similarly with female reproductive tract, it's connected. So if you're seeing problem at the end, let's say if you're seeing pus coming from the prepuce or dripping from the penis, you know you need to examine the whole tract. It may happen if you're lucky at the end part of the reproductive tract, but if you're not, then it's also possible that it happens in the accessory sex glands, which is higher up. And if you see the testis swollen, you're expecting something in the sperm or the semen abnormalities as well, because they are all connected. I think that is where I'm getting at. Yeah, so I'm not gonna touch each of the function. It's already labeled, so if you want to see, go ahead and see. Because if you want me to talk about pathology, I will touch it in later lecture. So this is as far as I think. If you memorize at least a bit, if not all, it will help you to understand if you are challenged with reproductive pathology or if you want to investigate the fertility of the bull, that sort. Yeah, but if I can recall, if you're going to do a rectal palpation, it's mostly whatever is inside the pelvic cavity. And I think when we say that, you can actually evaluate the accessory sex glands, which is the 4 accessory sex glands in bull, right? So that is the thing that you are interested mostly when you do rectal palpation in bull. Apart from evaluating the sex glands, you can also stimulate the bull to ejaculate. So yeah, it's also the same route where you put the electro-ejaculator probe to stimulate the accessory sex glands. Right. For the function, I think these are the 3 main structure that is important for you to understand, which is testes, the accessory sex glands, which I mentioned earlier. So there are 4, starting from ampulla, seminal vesicle, prostate, and corpus gland. So those are the sex gland. Testis ada 2 biji lah. And then penis ada 1 batang, which is the male gamete delivery organ. I'm not even going to talk about hemipenis when I say that. Yeah. Hemipenis is like 2 penis in snakes, right? Anyway. For testis, I think the main function that you need to understand is the spermatogenesis, which is divided into 3: spermatocytogenesis, meiosis, and spermiogenesis. So you know that they have all this different function and it's localized in different parts of the anatomy. If the animal has certain pathology which is very localized, it will affect different presentation of the sperm. So then you know which of the area of the anatomy for you to pinpoint in terms of their function. So I think this is where I'm getting at in terms of the functional anatomy. You know that all these organ have different function, so it has a very specific role to play. An insult or a damage to the structure will also come out quite specific. So I think what we're getting at is that if you do semen collection, you will see certain abnormalities that you could relate to in different localized anatomical region. So this is just a chart that I took online, and overall, I think a very generous, easy representation of what's happening in the testis. And it involves all those three processes. Yeah, so yeah, another thing that you need to understand is the predominant cells in the testis is the Tolley cells and the Leydig cells, which has a very specific function as well. And it actually correlates very well with the semen quality and semen volume especially. So that's also another point for you to consider. If you see, in general, if you see large testes in bull, if you want to compare it with another bull that has smaller testes, go with the bull that have a bigger testes. Most likely you're going to be all right. And you do that by measuring the scrotal circumference, right? So like the circumference of the scrotum. So if you measure it's big, most likely it's a big bull. Of course, we're not talking about orchitis bull or bull with any reproductive pathology that have extremely large testes that falls out of the normal testes. If you're trying to bet on that bull, I don't think you're making a good bet. So I'm just saying that if the animal don't have any reproductive pathology, if it's normal, go for the bigger testis bull. So as we were saying about ejaculates, when you say semen, what it really means is spermatozoa plus the seminal plasma. So spermatozoa is a sperm, but there's a lot of like this fluid around, which is produced by mainly the accessory sex glands. So that is what make up the semen or the ejaculate, if you observe in bull. So we have different consistency, we have different color, and I made this comparison in different species as well. I should have put somewhere here for deer semen, or there is deer semen, sorry. So to be clear, the first one, if you see here, is the penis of the crocodile. The second one is the semen collected from bull, and the third one is the semen collected from deer stag. That's the male deer for you. You can see and you can appreciate different color consistency, different thickness. So in crocodile, this is what it reminds me. Usually we call it like 4 consistency. Whether it's creamy, whether it's milky, whether it's slightly watery, milky watery, or it's watery. These are the 4 classes of color that we usually use. So when you say milky, it truly reminds me of milk that you drink off the glass from that box or from that bottle that you purchase. So it's white, right? So it's milky in color. So that is what it meant. And this is what it's being portrayed. If you see, it's milky color. But if you compare, if it's creamy, creamy would be like if you have shampoo, shampoo's friend is conditioner. Yeah. So if you have a conditioner, yeah, especially this particular brand, like Sunsilk brand, it's very thick, it's very creamy, right? And you apply it in your hair. So that is the same consistency when you say semen in deer, as opposed to semen in bull. It's more watery, it's more chalky, and the volume is even bigger. So I think this is where I'm making comparison between species, but also trying to highlight the different colors that we usually describe in describing semen. So you know the spermatozoa component, which I already briefly discussed, and you know semen are made up of sperm and seminal plasma. So seminal plasma have all its functions, array of function, plethora of functions, providing nutrients, enzyme, antimicrobials, hormones, immunoglobulins, enzymes, and proteins. So this smart chap, Kumar et al. 2012 has already outlined it for us. So it also functions as spermatozoa membrane protection. So that's the outer membrane, antioxidant, antimicrobial, capacitation, acrosome reaction, and early embryonic development. Yeah, so let's keep it at that. There may be debate in this sense, but as far as you were concerned, in natural breeding, seminal plasma is good for the sperm, and it plays a very important role as well. So we go again to your penis and your prepuce. So this is very beautiful paper that discuss on the anatomy, pathophysiology, and the scoring system of the bull sheath. So dia pun ada arrow yang warna putih dan arrow yang warna merah ni that I cannot read, but basically they know what's the function. If you're interested, you can see it. And if you can appreciate between the tropical bull and the temperate bull, so these are your Angus bull, and these are your Nelore, these are your KK, these are your Brahman. So kalau you tengok Bos Indicus ni, which is our tropical bull, their prepuce are very, nak kata apa, dia lebar sikit kan, dan dia besar. So you would imagine, I think it's something to do with surface area over ratio in terms of disseminating heat. So if you compare to the temperate bull, dia tak ada prepuce yang besar lah, yang panjang, yang lebar, yang macam ni, yang a bit undulating macam dia ni kan, dia drop. So it's very prominent if you see that between the tropical bull and the temperate bull. Oh, this is where I have a YouTube. If we have time, you can visit. Basically saying the animal genitalia have its very specific form and function, and it actually forms like lock and key. So you can't simply mate. For example, tadi kita tunjuk seladang dengan lembu, because it does not really match in terms of the lock and key, in terms of the morphology, but also in terms of their genetics. So their chromosomal number are also different. So I think that's what evolution is preventing them from actually hybridizing. So this is the paper we published on the anatomy and histology of false gharial. So if you're into that thing, you should definitely check this paper out. And this is me doing pregnancy diagnosis in elephant, and the slide is named Elephant in the Room. But I don't know where I'm going. Right, okay. So where I'm going at is there are different form and function of the animal. So if you look at the elephant in the room, which is the elephant, straight away you can see that it's very big, humongous creature. So if you try to compare it with a hamster, right, it's like, yeah, it's like very different. So a bull, an elephant bull can reach 5,400 kilogram, which equals to, if it's a male, that's 62 kilogram, equal to 87.1 Malaysian meal. So almost like all of our class combined together is equal to one bull. So the size is very different. In terms of anatomy, sangatlah berbeza. In terms of physiology, kalau tak pandai, tak apalah cakap tak tahu. Tapi anatomy, you tengok daripada luar pun you tahu, they're very different. So when it is different, then you compare them. So I compared it to a hamster, which is a bit of an extreme. In this instance, I compare it to bull. I compare it with a cow when we do pregnancy diagnosis. But similarly, if you're doing rectal palpation for accessory sex glands evaluation, sama lah. So in elephant, when we did pregnancy diagnosis, we couldn't even reach whatever it is in the uterus. Sebab my hand or our hand are too short, so we only feel, I think, slightly at the opening of the pelvic brim. Whereas if you imagine in a cow, if we go all in our arm's length, then we can feel almost the whole reproductive tract. So that is the difference that you need to bear in mind if you're doing or if you're practicing in different species. And you can appreciate as well from my face that I was not enjoying the procedure because it was very. This is my first time doing pregnancy diagnosis in an elephant, and yeah, suffice to say, it was. This is the expression lah. Macam actually, I was talking to Prof Wahid. Macam apa benda ni, like can't feel anything because it's actually, I think we're just tickling part of the vagina. Tak sampai pun the uterus. When actually, if you're trying to confirm pregnancy, you want to palpate somewhere in the uterus. That. So in terms of the reproductive physiology, wow, I think I outlined a lot. And these are things that you need to consider. Yeah, I don't know if we can manage to do it in half an hour. Yeah, but principally, when you want to know, when you look at a bull, what you want to know is you want to measure the soundness of the bull being able to breed. And that is when you do the breeding soundness evaluation. And once you do that evaluation, you basically categorize them into three, which is satisfactory, unsatisfactory, or classification deferred. So some of you senior may be more familiar with this as they enter Therio rotation. But basically what it meant is the first one is that the animal's bull or the bull semen quality and also morphometry confirms and you feel happy with it. Unsatisfactory is when it does not meet a certain minimum requirement and you say it's not good. And classification deferred means that there are some things that are not permanent that you suspect is happening to the bull, but you can probably fix it, you can improve it. So you warrant a second check in different periods. So probably you give it like a month of period for them to like recover, or so that you can alter the management so that it can improve if management is the issue. And you basically like giving them second chance for you to do the evaluation. So it's very simple apart from all this physiology that I mentioned in terms of principle. Another thing that I also like you to remember, if not revised, because I'm not sure what is it based on my mood, what is going to come out in test or exam, but these are the things that I feel are very important if you want to learn or if you want to understand the male reproductive physiology, that is always in this axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, gonadal. It may not be according to the order. I mean, dia boleh je berbalik-balik because of the reverse feedback mechanism, but know that this axis, AXIS, this axis exists. Know that it is there and it has all its role to the gonads, to the pituitary, to the hypothalamus. And when you're explaining the mechanism, when you're explaining the physiology, try to rope all of this together when you possibly can, including all the hormone, LH, FSH, progesterone, estrogen, yeah, testosterone in male. And what is it to the Leydig cell, what it is to the Sertoli cells. Yeah, so this picture has helped us revise that Sertoli cells has something to do with the nourishment and Leydig cells has something to do with the testosterone secretion. Cool. And the interaction that I want you to also try to relate is that P is equal to G plus E. I think if you carry this throughout your life, you can also help to explain the physiology and anatomy of the male production. So P stands for phenotype, G stands for genotype, and E is the environment. So if you look at a bull, what you're looking at is the phenotypic characteristic, right? So that's the external characteristic. But what is makeup of the phenotypic characteristics is from the gene, from the genotype. So if you're talking about Telembu, then it's the gene that drives the animal to have that body condition, to have that muscle conformation. But of course, it has to come with the E, the environment of what you fed the animal, how it is being kept, what are the routine. So you can't expect an athlete, contohnya macam selembu tadi, yang athlete lah, I call it athlete sebab dia sangat muscular kan, mungkin bodybuilder kan. You can't expect an athlete to perform based on gene alone. So mungkin keturunan dia, bapak dia, nenek dia, tok dia semua kaki angkat berat. So gene dia bagus. Tapi if you don't provide the environment, you don't provide the exercise, you don't provide proper nutrition, proper resting, proper science that puts into the athlete muscular development, then you can't get the phenotype. So same goes with fertility, same goes with muscle development, same goes with whatever you can name. So that's why you can actually appreciate phenotype if you're trying to compare, for example, beef animal and dairy animal. They have very distinct phenotype. I'm just going to start with that. If you ask me to elaborate more, I'm going to, yeah. Factors affecting the breeding physiology of the bull, mating system, breed function, farming system. Yeah, so there are many factors that actually affect the breeding physiology of the bull. This is the E part, I think. Yeah. So the environment part, mating system dia macam mana. So kalau you pakai dia natural versus you nak pakai dia AI atau assisted reproductive technology versus you want to use it for teaching, you want to use it for exhibition, all have different function, different purpose, and you also have to consider whether the animal is underserved or overserved. Yeah, if Husna is here and listening. So if you talk about Prada, the bull in Newish, is the animal underserved? Underserved maksudnya adakah you tak pakai dia sangat untuk mating, then dia pun macam stagnant. In that case, the bull in law, dia tak ada female yang boleh on heat, so maybe it's actually underutilized. Then what happens to the bull is that the reproductive function of the bull is not active. So is that the case? Overserve pula, contohnya you ada satu herd yang ada 100 ekor cow. Tapi you kena kod, you letak satu je bull. So seekor bull ni nak kena mate dengan 100 ekor cow. So that is an extreme example of overserve. I hope you get my point. So breed function pun sama, dairy punya beza, beef punya beza in terms of the fertility, in terms of the physiology. So there's always trade-off when you make natural selection ataupun when you make selective breeding. There's always a trade-off. Kalau beef contohnya, when you always select for muscle development, it always interfere with certain genetic problem. If you're familiar with inguinal hernia, so beef breed are more prone to that. Dairy beef pula, kalau you select, when you say select, right, actually it's been selected. Maksudnya selected ni dipilih lah. Dia pembiakan yang dipilih. So dia telah dipilih. If you look at domestication of cow, I think for thousands of years. So for thousands of years, you've been selecting. So these are the effect. These are the outcome that you're seeing. So in dairy, the extreme is that it produces a lot of milk, very good producer, very good production. Tapi dia punya trade off-nya adalah it always interfere with the fertility of the bull, especially. Yeah, not so much on the cow. So that's the trade-off. So usually sebab tu in dairy animal lagilah you kena betul-betul check dia punya BSE sebab kadang-kadang the bull may be shooting blank although the female is okay. So perangai dia kalau ni kita suka salahkan yang betina kan, tapi we forgot that it takes two to tango. So it's the male also very important for you to investigate and evaluate. Farming system sama, so if it's intensive, if it's semi-intensive, it's a feedlot, extensive, the bull behave differently. So I was invited to a talk by DVS somewhere to talk on breeding of feedlot animal. So my instant reply to them was that usually we don't do breeding in feedlot animal. So I have to respectfully decline the invitation because it doesn't make sense, you know. You don't aim for a breeding program in a feedlot system. So that is where I'm going at. So factors affecting male fertility, banyaknya. Yeah. So basically in lecture, I just list out everything that I know. You can probably cherry pick from whatever I outline, and it's very useful for me to cherry pick as well when making test questions and exam questions. But if I could highlight what I want to point out here is that, yeah, there's a lot. Maybe we should move on to the next slide. So breeding seasonality. Right, so these are in different species, but to a certain extent, we do observe it in bull, that there is a certain degree of seasonality or just a certain degree of period or time that the animal are more fertile, and certain period of time the animal are less fertile. So in extreme example in seasonal animal is deer. We do observe that the testosterone profile actually correlates to the rainfall. When there's a lot of rain, testosterone hormone also peaked. And as far as we understand, rainfall plays an important role to the breeding seasonality of the animal because rainfall plays a very significant role in the growth of the pasture, Maksudnya rumput tu bila ada banyak hujan, dia akan sangat segar, sangat hijau. Tapi bila kurang hujan, dia sangat kering. And these are all related to Malaysia. We are affected by monsoon. We are affected by La Nina, El Nino. So all these environmental factors should be taken into consideration. And if the animal is feeding solely or relying majoritarily in the feed, which is their resources, in order for them to produce milk, to provide to the offspring, for the offspring to grow, for the mother to carry out the gestation. So that's why I think rainfall plays a very important role in understanding their seasonality or impairing their seasonality. And it is true in India at least. Oh yeah. And it is also evidence in the picture here. These are picture taken in TPU. Kalau you nampak anak-anak dia sebaya je kan. Kita pun selalu nampak kalau kita datang bulan 12, time tu musim lah, semua beranak. So that is also another indicator of seasonality. Maksudnya dia beranak pada satu calving period yang sangat rapat ataupun sangat singkat. So these short intervals of breedings are usually indicative of seasonality. So when you go to farm, you see it's very uniform when you don't do any management or estrus synchronization. So it's actually suggesting that the animal may be, to a certain extent, seasonal. But a lot of time, people are not happy when you try to relate seasonality to tropical animal because they say we're not temperate region, we don't have snow, we don't have summer. But I think this is a tool. If you're a good vet, use it for your advantage. Do a proper observation and let the truth tell you lah. So kalau you nampak macam tu lah. Tak payahlah nak apa. I don't think you should lament too much on the fact whether it's seasonal or not. If the carving is like this, semua pun sebaya, it is what it is. So maybe then there's something that you need to alter in your management to improve the feed ke, kan, to support bila musim panas dan sebagainya. Supaya animal you tidaklah nanti pregnancy toxemia, tidaklah nanti dystocia, tidaklah nanti arthritis, not so much. Abortion dah cakap ke belum? Abortion, diseases, yeah, I think it all goes in line. And a lot of time, I think we overlook this environmental factor, and I think it's about time that we as a vet also pay attention to the environment, climate change, sustainable agricultural development, and that sort. Because we do contribute a little, if not, to the greenhouse gas through methane production. This is an excerpt that I took so that you can actually appreciate what are the breeding ratio in different species. So yeah, as I was saying, there's no one size fits all. So at least you need to understand if you're looking at bovine, or if you look at lembu, one male can serve 20 females, so that's a ratio of 1 to 20. So ovine pula lain, dia boleh 1 ke 35. These are all suggested in article that I picked from. So equine mostly done using AI, but of course there's this certain extreme. One chap in the class, cervine ataupun deer, 2 to 20 or 1 to 15. Oh, 2 to 20, this is unique in deer. I didn't make it 1 to 15 because actually it needs another friend in order for it to be, yeah, to have high libido, or in order for it to perform as a herd. Dia tak boleh seorang-seorang. They are this kind of prey animal that's a bit prehistoric in that sense. They get panic if they're the only stag, so they need another friend. Androgenic and anabolic effect of testosterone. So you know that testosterone is the main function or the main hormone that serves the function of male development in male animal. But if it's in different stages of life, if it's in utero, if it's in puberty, pre-puberty and adulthood, it serves different function. So this is what I'm getting at. Just know that although it's one particular hormone, in different period of time, it serves different function, and it's very important to serve certain physiological needs. So kalau kurang testosteron ataupun terlebih testosteron ataupun ada kembar free martin tu, itu yang datangnya kadang-kadang. If in cow you see free martins, female with male characteristics. Sama juga dengan goat, we have one in large animal ward. We have this Jamnapari goat that looks that is a female by characteristic, so it's a pseudo hermaphrodites. It's a female by characteristic, but it's slightly male. So it's very muscular. Kalau korang pergi Large Animal Ward, korang tengok. Tapi dia ada vagina, dia ada clitoris. Clitoris dia tu slightly besar. Mungkin testosterone hormone effect. And it cannot conceive. So that's the function of testosterone as well that you also need to play a role, especially in twin animal. So bila ada female and male, usually the male have this hormone that it will influence another female. So this phenomenon is called free martin. So complain daripada farmer pula, doktor, saya ada kambing betina tapi dia lesbian. So these are complaint from the farmer. Macam, kenapa pula? So then I was reading about free martinism in goat, so it also exists. So these are what farmers will complain to you. So explain to them that this particular goat may be hermaphrodites. So if you're thinking to breed the animal, forget it. Go ahead and cull the animal. So usually that's the advice lah. This is a charo label. I don't know where does this manifest from, but we went to DVS punya Hari Veterina Sedunia. So dia ada exhibition and they were showcasing their lembu-lembu cantik, lembu-lembu sadar ni. So I think this made champion of something. So you can see that very good conformation, very good muscular development, sangat tough lah, sangat sadar lah. Warna pun uniformnya cantik, hitam, but most of them use it for hobby, especially for lembu sadar. But yeah, but we're not denying that there will be a ripple effect from doing this hobby kan. So maybe after this semen will be more accessible, AI will be more common, then you can also use it for beef production. Tapi kalau so far macam ni memang dia hobi lah, memang dia sayang. Tapi semen dia boleh ambil, boleh pakai. I think that's the gist of it. Another thing that you should know is also puberty. So to a certain age, they will reach puberty when they secrete enough hormone to develop secondary sex characteristics. I don't know why I put this slide. Oh, because you can actually hasten puberty. Maksudnya you boleh cepatkan dia. You boleh balihkan dia dengan lebih cepat. If you use exogenous hormone, if you use some immunological blocking and dietary enhancement. So diet is also a very important role if you want the animal to reach puberty earlier. And usually it's very true, both for male and female, you want the animal to reach puberty earlier because usually when it enters sexual development earlier tu, dia punya tempo untuk dia produce tu akan lebih lama. Jadi maksudnya you boleh pakai dia dalam tempoh masa yang lama dan juga quality pun. Bila dia puberty awal ni selalunya dia punya quality anak dia bagus. Mak dia punya quality in terms of maintaining pregnancy pun bagus. It always kind of point towards that direction. So I think that's the idea. If you can actually alter to a certain extent, maksudnya jangan sampai lewat lah kan. Jangan sampai lembu tu dah berapa tahun, mungkin 3 tahun, 4 tahun pun belum lagi puberty. Mungkin sebab sebenarnya dia malnourished ke apa kan. So that's an extreme of course. But if you can do it faster, meaning that the animal is very nourished, nutrition semua okay. So kalau you nak lagi cepat pun, you can use all these inhibitor ataupun exogenous hormone lah. Know that the tools are there for you, I think is what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, so these are the application. If you use exogenous FSH, you will have effect on the Sertoli cells. If you use endogenous, no, this is not if you use endogenous. If you use exogenous FSH, yep. So it will have like this cascade effect, and you can actually hasten the puberty. Basic understanding of reproductive anatomy and physiology, I think It's important for all of us in making a well-informed diagnosis on male reproductive status. Before you can say if you are married or if you have a partner, if before you can say that we are having problem with, let me just try to rephrase this. If you are married, if you are having problem to conceive if you're having problem to conceive baby, don't point your finger immediately to female, because I think this is like a norm. I don't think that's right. So check the male as well. There's a 50% chance that male can also contribute to this problem. Same goes with animal. You need to understand the anatomy. You need to understand the physiology before you can point to the animal. Without you knowing it, to your surprise, sebab you adalah, let's say you are the owner of the animal, right? Or same if you are owner to your body. If you don't have certain requirement, let's say nutrition, sebenarnya tak cukup, you can't perform physiologically, you can't perform anatomically, because reproduction as a system is usually the behind or the luxury part of life that you can afford to. So kalau you tak mampu, memang reproduction ni akan ke belakang. So kalau you makanan pun tak cukup, macam mana you nak fikir pasal ada anak? Macam mana you nak fikir pasal kahwin? Dan rumah pun tak ada, contohnya kereta pun tak ada. Tapi bila you dah ada semua ni, dah lengkap, baru you fikir kita nak ada anak ataupun kita nak cuba ada ni lah, offspring. And when you do, if you don't get it, don't be that typical person who blame the woman or the female animal. Actually, the easiest part is to do evaluation in male, because you just need to ejaculate and check the semen. Kalau female ni, dia mungkin lebih banyak lagi step dia kan. So if you're doing diagnosis of elimination, start with the male. I think that's an easier way to go at it in terms of looking at fertility affected the reproduction. I hope that covers that. I hope that concludes our sharing for today. And after sharing whatever I have on domestic animal, which is bull, which is cow, which is partly cervine, partly ovine, partly caprine, do not forget that we also have wildlife in Malaysia. We are blessed, most hotspot biodiversity in the world. So this is me working with tiger, and this is me working with crocodile. If you ever have the opportunity, I hope you can use this knowledge that we have today as a guideline, as a basis, as a platform for you to apply laterally in different species. And when you do, if you're confused, it's okay, because what we learn in crocodile and tiger and deer as well, it's very likely that you get confused, and it's okay to be confused, but you need to develop the knowledge anyway in that species. Yep, let's just keep at that. Thank you. So we have 10 minutes of Q&A. If you have any question, you are more welcome to ask. If you have any question that I cannot ask during this Q&A, you can also email to me. I do reply emails. All right. Thank you.
Hi, Doctor. Just a quick question.
Let me stop sharing.
Okay.
Done. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Hi, Doctor. So just a quick question, when you breed gar and cattle, you get selembu, right? Is there so technically the meat is good and stuff like that, but is there like a possibility, because there are different kinds of possibility that the offspring is sterile?
Yeah. Actually, that's a very big possibility. So at least in male, the male is infertile, but we have found that female can actually breed, although it's not as good, but it can still breed. But I suppose the initial idea when they're trying to develop this breed was that it's destined to be a terminal breed, or is destined to be animal that is meant for culling. So it's not so much to rebreed if it's impossible even at this stage. And to begin with, the study, if you see, it's just crossing the barrier of hybridization, and it's just basically doing that, showing that it can be done. It's possible through ART means. But after doing that, we actually passed the ball back to Pelitan Scott, because actually this is like, I think, a collaboration between DVS and also Pelitan. But then after that, Pelitan decided not to go through because they don't want to hybridize animal. And then they have this new act, Wildlife Conservation Act 2010, that they are against hybridization of animals. So somewhere along the line, we had an initial agreement that it's good. We can use this for economic purpose. We can use our natural resources, natural genetic resources in order for us to improve the beef industry. But somewhere along the line, we miscommunicate. Pelitan think that they're not gaining anything. TVS was gung ho about it, but yeah, apparently Pelitan owns every wildlife, and they decided not to do it. But yeah, possibility of fertility or infertility was definitely the questions. But if you're talking about terminal breed, I don't think that really matters. Thanks, Mira.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Welcome. Any other question? Kavin is here. Hi, Kavin. Let's see. Apa ni? Kavin tanya soalan. Jangan noob.
Tak ada soalan dah, Dok.
Dr. Aisyah Ismail is still with us. I hope everything goes well. Vijay is also here. Hi, Vijay. Usna also still here. So I take that as no question. Thank you very much. See you this Friday. Bye.
Thank you, Doctor. Bye.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you,
Have a nice
Doctor.
day.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Doctor.
Bye. Thanks all.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
You're welcome. Meeting.